This is the foundation of everything that a data analyst does. This is like the foundation. Okay, think of it like this. Your all the data cleaning functions I've been looking at, the normal functions, advanced functions, and everything that we've been looking at up until this place. This is the what's it called? Foundation, okay, of the course. Now, from here, what we are doing here is to solidify the foundation, because what I'm going to teach you today using the SUMIF, COUNTIF to analyze data is something that we can do easily using pivot tables. But your foundation needs to be strong so that you would understand what your pivot table is doing when you are making use of your pivot table. Okay. Now, aggregation as an aggregation. What is an aggregate? Defined aggregate is a value that summarizes the combination of different values. Okay. A value that summarizes the combination of different values in a particular way. All right. That is why when they say, oh, all these functions are aggregate functions, sum, mean, max, average, how are they aggregate functions? They are aggregate functions because the summation combines the values together and adds them up. When you combine together and add up, you have one value giving you the total of your addition. But if my aggregates I use is average, average would sum up, then divide by the number of values again. It is also an aggregation function because it looks at a combination of numbers and returns just one number. Okay. What if I say minimum? When I ask you what is the minimum of something, in order to be able to get minimum, you don't look at only one value. You look at combination of value and you decide that, oh, this value is the minimum. So there needs to be a combination of value. There needs to be taken into consideration more than one value for you to say you are calculating the aggregate of something. So aggregate is not only summation, summing value. No. Okay. It is not only summing value. Very good. So it looks at a combination of numbers and returns one number. Beautiful. Now, when I say this forms a basis of what you'll be doing generally in data analysis, tell me one thing that you think they do in one calculation that they perform in data analysis, and I'll tell you that there's an aggregate involved somewhere. You can't run from it. Many of what you'll be doing is to be looking at, if you're working on a sales data, you'll be looking at the performance of maybe the company or the institution by different categories. So you'll be looking at sum of sales, the profits, the quantity sold, and things like that. Even though there are automated ways to do that using maybe your what's it called now? Your pivot table. Okay. But this is another different approach. Should in case you want to make use of functions instead, Or imagine visiting an interview and what you were asked to do is to make use of a function rather than a pivot table. Okay, so what do you do? What do you do? Now, let's see. Aggregation. I'm going to introduce you to these functions quickly. The sum, min, max, average, count, and count A. Quickly. If I want to get the sum of some values, let me demonstrate in here quickly. Let me demonstrate in here quickly the sum function in various ways. All right. If you want to add up two values in Excel, let's say I have some values here. I have these values. Okay, all these values in this column. Now, let's say I want to add up some specific values. I can start with my equal to sign. And I'll say, okay, add up cell D9 plus cell D15 plus cell D20. Okay, then press enter. It will give me the summation of those three cells. You see, we can add up easily like that in Excel. Okay. Another way we can add up is using the sum function. Now, because it is a function as well, I start with equal to, and I'll call the name of the function sum, open brackets. Now, you can see that the sum is asking you for number 1, number 2, and so on. So what are you summing? I want to sum cell D9 because the value in cell D9 is a number. Then comma, another number I want to add with it is cell D15, comma, another number I want to add to it is cell D20. And then I will close my bracket and press enter. You see that I have the same value. Okay. But now, Excel developers looked and considered the plight of analysts using Excel that what if I want to sum a number of cells that are within a range, meaning they follow each other consecutively? Will I now start saying, okay, equal to sum, open brackets, this value, comma, 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 and continue like that because I want to sum everything in this range. So you can see that before I get to the bottom, I'm ready. Some people have already beaten me to it. Before I get to the bottom, probably maybe 2 years later. Okay, so this is not a very nice way to calculate it. So they now said, okay, what can we do? They introduced the sum function, and in the sum function, instead of stating the individual numbers, what you can then do is, okay, give a range that you want to sum. All right, so looking at this range, what you do is you will highlight the range. So I want to highlight from here to here. Now, when I highlight, because it is a continuous range, that when I highlighted this range, what I have inside of my formula is what? D2 colon D12. Now, that colon is defining a range. It's saying that I am going from cell D2 and I am going in one straight range all the way to cell D12. So all the cells in that range is under consideration. I close my bracket and press enter. So it gives me the sum of the values in that range. Now, do you know that you can have the values in different ranges? Let's say I have this value in this range. Then I have, let me copy this and paste it here. Okay, so I have this value in this range. Then I have another value in this range. And I want to sum from this range. So this is D2 to, let's say, D10. I want to sum D2 to D10. And I also want to sum it with these values here. So the sum function allows me to do that easily. How? Equal to sum, open brackets. What is the first range I want to sum? You see that place where you have number 1, you can give a range. I will say sum D2 to D10. Highlight it. It will become a range. D2 to D10. Then I will now put comma. Now in number 2, I will now put the second range, which is this range. Highlight it as well. And then I close my brackets. So it will add the values in this selected range to the values in this selected range, so that when I press my enter, it gives me this summation as a total. So that is just a brief demonstration of how the sum works. Now, you don't need to most times highlight the range if it is the entire column you want to sum. Okay? Most times you don't need to highlight the range and just be doing like this. Okay? You can simply select the column header and it will highlight the entire column. All right? So let's take a look at this quickly. Now, to make my work even easier, okay, that I don't have to be selecting range again and again and again and again. Okay, what I can simply do is this. Now, I'm coming. Let me clear format here. Good. Now, you see where I have this data. I'm going to give it a defined name, a proper name range. Okay, you've seen how to sum values within a range. Yes. But now I can define this range properly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this entire range, okay, where I have my entire data, so that it makes my work easier. Once I've done this, you see what will happen. Now I highlight this entire data. I'm going to come up to where I have formulas. Under formulas, you see where you have defined names. I'll say define from selection. Okay, define from selection. So I'll say create from selection rather. Good. Now here it will ask me something. It says create names from values in the what? So I'm going to untick left column. I will say only top row, meaning for each one of the values I highlighted, the name of that range should be the name at the top row, meaning when I say amount, I'm talking about the values beneath it. When I say particulars, I'm talking about the values beneath it. So I will click OK. Now I'm good. Okay. So you would see now that I want to sum. If I say, okay, come here, let's sum equal to sum, open brackets. And instead of giving a number I want to sum, because I have already defined this range, I can simply say, oh, sum the amount column, because why? I said the name of this range is the name at the top of the column, which is amount. So if I type amount, you see that it brings out amount for me as the name of a column or a defined range. So if I press tab, you can see that as soon as I select it, it selects the entire range without including the column header. Do you see that? So I close my bracket and press enter. So this gives me the sum total of the values in that column. Do you see that? So if I want to get the minimum of the amount, I'll simply say equal to min, open bracket, amount. So once you type amount, highlight the range, close your bracket and press enter. So you can see that it is easier to do it like that. Once you've already named the range you want, without stressing. If not, what I would have been teaching you is, okay, what you should do is say equal to, for maximum value now, what is the maximum value? I'll say max, open bracket. I'll now say, yeah, come here. Or yeah, click and drag. Highlights like this. You now be highlighting till you get to the bottom. And that's how you now be doing it for every formula. You don't need to do that. You can see that after highlighting, if you just highlight like this, if you highlight from here to here, you can see what is in the cell. If you highlight from here to here, you can see the range in the cell, D2 to D25. But if you highlight the entire range to the bottom, you can see what you have in the cell. It puts amount because it remembers that, you have renamed this range as amount. And then you simply close your bracket and press enter. To name the range, simply highlight the entire range. You come to your formulas tab, create from selection, and you select top row. Make sure your left column is not selected. It is only top row you select and you click OK. That's all. So to get the average amount equal to average, you need to type average fully. You can see because I put AVG here, does not mean that's what you are using. Okay. You need to type the average fully. Average, open brackets, amount. I'll close my brackets and press enter. For the count, what the count function does is that it counts the number of cells in that range that contains only numbers. Any cell that contains a text, it does not count it. Let's see, if I say equal to count, open bracket, and I say count amount, and I close my bracket and press enter, it tells me there are 90 cells. So that is 90 purchases. Do you see that? It tells me there are 90 cells in this range. 90 cells that contains number. You need to take note of that. 90 cells that contains number. Okay? Because if I come to a cell and I delete or I type a text, let's say I type a day in this cell and I press enter, you can see that the count changes to 89, meaning there are 89 cells that contain number. But if I undo this, come back here, equal to, let's look at count A now. What count A does is to give you the number of cells that are not empty. the number of cells in that range that is not empty. So equal to count A, open brackets. So what is the name of the range? Amounts. And I close my bracket and press enter. So it also tells me 90 because there is no empty cell in that range. So what I'll simply do now is to show you the difference. So if I type in a cell AD and I press enter, the count tells me 89 cells. While count A tells me 90 cells. Why? Because count only returns the cells that contain number. Count A will return cells that are not empty. But if I delete the value in a cell, now count A is returning 89 because there's one empty cell. But count has gone down again because this empty cell does not contain number. This one too does not contain number. So when I say does not contain number, you need to take note. Not that if I write a day 1, 2, 3, it will count it. No. For the count to work, it has to be fully numeric. All right. So undo, so that I have my values back. Now, it gets interesting when you now want to start your analysis of data. Someone asked the question, is there a way to select a range without highlighting in a situation where we have large data? No, you have to highlight. But I know your question. Your question is without manually highlighting, clicking and dragging. Okay, so what you do is very simple. Click on your data. Okay, click anywhere on your data and press Ctrl A to highlight the entire range. Okay, don't mind that this place is showing what's it called, as if it's not highlighted. It's because that's the cell you clicked on. Okay, but it is also highlighted. All right, so it highlights the entire range like this. Okay, another way is start from the top and then press your Control Shift key down. Once you press your Control and Shift key down, on your keyboard, you use your arrows to direct. Your left arrow will highlight it to the, or your right arrow will highlight it to the right, and then your down arrow will highlight it to the bottom. So those are two ways by which you can quickly highlight your values.
Endeavor to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thank you. See you in our next class. Bye.